Welcome back. This is the Tuesday edition of the nation's most revered breakfast show, Good Morning Namibia. During a court hearing held last week in the International Court of Justice, South Africa accused Israel of breaching genocide conventions and pleaded with the United Nations top court to order an immediate halt to Israel's military operation, but Israel has vehemently denied these allegations. By taking Israel to this court, South Africa is seeking binding preliminary orders to compel Israel to stop its military campaign in Gaza, which more than 23,000 people have died since Israel's first attack on Gaza on the 7th of October 2023, just a little over 100 days ago. The two-day hearing in the International Court of Justice concluded on Friday, and now deliberations on the matter are underway, which will be followed by the court's decision, and it will be delivered at a public sitting, the date of which will be announced in due course. Namibia, alongside other countries, backed South Africa's move to bring Israel to the International Court of Justice. And for more on this matter, we're joined by public policy analyst Dr. Marius Kudumo. Good morning, Doc, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing on this gift of a Tuesday, and how has the year of expectations treated you thus far, Doctor?
I'm fine. It's okay. It's good.
We're happy to hear that. Now, Doctor, getting straight to business, can South Africa's court case against Israel ultimately end the war in Gaza?
Yeah, it is difficult to predict with certainty because of two reasons. Firstly, we still have to hear the judgment of the court. And in terms of court cases, it can go any way. Secondly, decisions of the International Court of Justice are not enforced by the court itself. It is actually enforced by the Security Council of the United Nations. In other words, they can rule to say the war must end, but they don't have the mechanism to enforce that decision. So as a result of that, it is difficult for us to say whether it will end the war. But whether it will end the war or not, in my view, the case of South Africa has a moral, historical, and diplomatic significance. So if Israel ignores, for example, if the court rules in the favor of South Africa, it has also some implications in the standing of Israel as a state in the international community.
It's an important point that you're raising, Doctor. Having regard to the fact that the court itself can't enforce its ruling and that power vests with the Security Council, does that mean that it's ultimately up to Israel, even if the Security Council so directs that the ruling gets adhered to, that Israel still has a choice whether or not to comply?
Yeah, they have a choice not to comply. In other words, to ignore the decision of the court and continue with the war. That's why it is difficult to predict with certainty, because the intention of the international systems as a governance system depends on the willingness of member states to support such governance systems.
You did say, Doctor, that if the ruling goes the way of South Africa, that Israel has a moral, historic, and diplomatic responsibility, and its stance in the international community could be affected. Could you provide more context to that statement, please?
Yeah, look, the case of South Africa for me is significant because it is standing on the side of the weak in circumstances like this. Now, Israel itself as a state, the 1948 Genocide Convention came into being out of the lessons and the experiences of the Holocaust. Therefore, we come up with this convention so that what happened should never happen again. Now, if Israel does what was done to them, then obviously people will question, why was it a matter when it was done to you, but it's not a matter when it is done to another person? So their moral standing in international affairs will thus be affected.
Now, what we know from what transpired in The Hague in the Netherlands last week, Doctor, is that Israel, of course, denies the allegations of genocide. From your observations, would you say that both Israel and South Africa presented arguments to the International Court that were based on fact and that could hold merit, also bearing in mind what you had said in your introductory overview, that as far as court cases are concerned, it could go either way?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in law, but from a public policy perspective, both states have actually presented solid cases. South Africa have argued that genocide is being committed, or there is an intent to communicate, there's an intent to commit genocide. And this is against the spirit of the 1948 Genocide Convention, because that convention is about prevention. If genocide has been committed, it's about punishment. And South Africa have tried to demonstrate that there is a violation of that convention and that it has implications on the Palestinians in the Gaza. And Israel was arguing in terms of self-defense. That's why they are doing what they are doing, that they are not targeting civilians, which is against international law, and that South Africa have not exhausted all avenues before approaching the court. So they presented their arguments.
If we have regard to the jurisdiction and the mandate of the court, what you shared with us earlier, namely the historic and diplomatic significance, are those factors that that court could also take into consideration, or do they also only come into play once judgment has been passed?
I think they can take it into consideration because those are the facts that are before the court. I think they will take it in consideration, whatever decisions they take. We must also take into account that South Africa was bringing this matter to seek for provisional measures. That's why it is urgent. And I assume the judges will take the severity of the situation as well as the urgency of the matter into consideration.
Many view this as a bold move on the part of South Africa. Does South Africa also run the risk of negatively influencing its own international relations? At the same time, we saw Namibia and other countries join South Africa in support and solidarity. What could the implications be for Namibia and those supporting South Africa?
I don't see any implications. We must remember that states advance interests, and those are their own interests. Sometimes the interests of the state, but also sometimes the interests of the people. So it is normal in international relations that at certain times there will be differences of opinions amongst the states. I think what is important, especially for Namibia as well as for South Africa, is the extent to which our diplomats, our representatives in the various countries, are capable of explaining why we have taken the position we have taken. And if we can explain that, even if there are differences of opinion, then in terms of state interest, obviously anyone can agree or disagree, but at least there's an understanding why this position.
Dr. Kudumo, a cat finds itself amidst the pigeons when Germany came out supporting Israel last week. And of course, we saw Namibia joining that discussion and condemning Germany's support of Israel. What do you make of these developments?
I take it that it was insensitive for Germany to come out openly and to say they want also to join in that matter. It is insensitive when you look at the historical record of Germany in this regard. We must remember that the genocide in Namibia is the first genocide of the century before we came to the Israelis during the Second World War.
Any final thoughts, Doc, before we let you go, please?
Yeah, obviously, I think this case is important, as I have explained. We are awaiting the outcome of that. Whichever way it will go, it is significant for South Africa that they have taken a moral and principled stand to support those that are weak, that cannot support themselves. But obviously, when we are making this analysis, we are not ignoring what Hamas have done, because peaceful negotiation is supposed to be a solution. So we are eagerly awaiting what will be the outcome of the court.
When can we expect the outcome, more or less, Doctor?
I'm not sure. There is speculation that it might be the end of the preliminary one, that it might be the end of the end of this month, but we'll hear what the court has to say.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
That was public policy analyst Dr. Marius Kudumo talking to us about South Africa having taken Israel to the International Court of Justice in The Hague in the Netherlands. We will be back after a brief break.